I'm Dr. John Gartner.
And I'm Dr. Harry Segal.
And welcome to this preview of Shrinking Trump.
On this week's show, we are very pleased to interview Chrissie Houlahan, who's a representative in Congress from the 6th District of Pennsylvania. She showed her strength and principles and with terrific questioning of Tulsi Gabbard in the hearings that followed the SignalGate scandal. We're very pleased to have her on. She's the first elected official we've had on as a guest, and we couldn't be happier to hear her views. Right, John?
Yes. And the other thing this week is we're putting a spotlight once again on Trump's cognitive deterioration, because as we told you before the election, dementia is a deteriorating illness. And if he really has it, eventually we would see signs of it in the White House. So we'll be talking about Alcatraz. Is it a prison? Is it a movie? Or is it both? We warned you and we predicted, right? That everyone said, but if you guys are right, remember we were before the election, but if you guys are right, then the implications are we could have a president with dementia. And we said, that's right. And they said, but that's terrifying. I said, well, you know what's even more terrifying is dementia is a progressive illness. So he's only going to get worse and worse. And so there's only so much they can do to hide it, but it's starting to ooze out.
But also, which I think is more dangerous, is his severe personality disorder, because that's where the extorting comes in. That's where the destructive wish to kind of destroy everything, to humiliate others. We're going to talk about Trump in the Oval Office with Carney. So if I had to choose between a president with dementia or a president with a severe personality disorder like Trump's, I go with the first one.
Well, the problem is we have both. And I think the interaction is quite frightening. But you're right.
Yes.
His reptilian brain is still functioning very well. You know, it's the cortex. It's the cortex that's going. So he knows how to extort, right? He has an instinct to dominate and destroy and humiliate. And we're going to see that in this interview with Carney, right? Later in the show, how he works all of those muscles, you know, those raptor muscles, you know, his lizard brain still very strong. But, you know, it's when he has to actually kind of make sense of like language and ideas and scenarios. For example, knowing whether they actually happened or whether they happened in a movie. That's where he gets a little confused.
Okay, so, I want to, John, I want to put a spin on something you're saying just for a moment for our audience before we go into the clips and talk about things the way we do, which is I disagree that it's lizard brain. I think his personality is intact. I think he can speak broadly and generally, but when he has to be precise, you start to see him fall apart in his thinking. So it's almost like he can do his old behaviors and has language for it. But when you start to pin him on things, the lying is out of control, and then he also doesn't make sense when pushed. That's how I would phrase it.
Yeah. So it's the same personality disorder, but with this cognitive fraying around the edges.
Exactly. Bravo. I agree. We're in agreement.
So, like, for example, and you know, and a lot of what he does is impulsive. But of course, we learned from our guest last week, Dr. Vincent Greenwood, who's an expert on psychopathy, that psychopaths are impulsive, but people with dementia are also impulsive. So now what we have is him kind of acting on his impulses, but in a way that are a little confused. So I have a tough question, and it's tough in the sense that I know I want you to be able to speak obviously from where you are, but I have to speak from where I am. I am really strongly of the opinion that Donald Trump is a Russian asset. I simply believe that exactly as the word sounds. I believe he and Putin are working systematically on the same team, whatever you want to call that, however you want to describe that relationship. And one of the things that's been disappointing to me is that the Democrats, I feel, have been underwhelming in their confrontation of, okay, what is potentially a national security crisis of a proportion that we can't almost even comprehend, right? And this has been going on really since his first election. And the Democrats didn't open an impeachment inquiry. I was one of those people that was literally chaining myself to my congressman's door, demanding an impeachment inquiry, because an inquiry, not saying an impeachment, but if you suspect that the president might be in league with our mortal enemy, then I think you have a responsibility to look into it. Now you see what he's doing with Ukraine. It does nothing to disprove. In fact, it reinforces that notion. To what extent are we going to confront, explore, whatever word we want to use, but get more deeply into this and not pretend it's not happening, if that makes sense?
Well, you and I are talking to each other because I had some similar concerns about in 2016. I raised my hand to run for Congress, having never run for anything but class secretary, in fifth grade before this, having no intention of ever being a public figure in this way and being a deeply introverted person. I did this. I ran for Congress because of my deep concern about President Trump 1.0, and because of the fact that I really thought that we were barreling towards a very dangerous administration and a very dangerous time in our security, our national and global security. And so you may recall early into that first term that I served, 7 of us, myself included, wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post, which said, if the allegations against President Trump in blocking aid to Ukraine were true, that this indeed would be impeachable and we should open an investigation. And as you may or may not recall, that was the tipping point when Speaker Pelosi did instigate an investigation in the second impeachment of President Trump. And it's ridiculous that we even have to say the second impeachment of President Trump. And so I am here still because the work still needs to be done to make sure that we are addressing if he's a witting agent of Russia, there's one thing to say. If he's unwitting, there's another thing to say. It doesn't really matter in many ways because we're all in the same situation, regardless, which is he is bowing to a very, very dangerous man and in Putin, and a very, very dangerous set of ambitions that Putin has, which look remarkably like 1939, for lack of a better way of describing it. And so there are Democrats here, myself being one of them, who are literally here. And my mission is to do the very, very best that I can to help mitigate the damage to the degree that I can, to get rid of people like Secretary Hegseth, who I believe to be part of the problem, to get rid of, we want to talk about Russian assets, Tulsi Gabbard. There are all kinds of things that are very, very alarming that are going on within this administration. And there are many of us here that are here just in fact because of this same concern that you have.
So that's our preview of Shrinking Trump for this week. But please don't just watch the preview. The show is a lot better than that because there's so much more of it. You can catch us on the Really American Network. Our show live streams every Friday at 3:00 Eastern Time. You can find us on YouTube. You can also hear an audio version of the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere you get your podcast. But we hope you'll catch up with us and watch the whole show. See you then.
Take care.